Oxygen Blast technical seminars are an Intertech production. For instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.
And I've already done that here, so I can't show you from scratch. But basically, you can begin up here by making a new state group. So I just called it the mouse state group. Now you can give these guys any name you want. It's just going to refer to a name you can specify in code to say, yes, when this happens, do a certain thing. Okay? So I got one called mouse enter star, mouse exit star, mouse down star. I could have called that foo bar quaz. That wouldn't matter. Okay? So for each one of these visual states, what you're essentially going to do is you're going to make a brand new storyboard. Right? So up here, you can add the state. That's how we get this guy here. And if any of you have worked with the Storyboard Editor of Blend before, that's what we see going on down here. Right? So I can pick a state, open up the storyboard for it. So here, see that little bounce effect towards the end? Okay, that's what I put together on my storyboard. I could make it more dramatic just to make it look even a little more interesting. I could maybe rotate this. If we do this now, right? So as I'm building up the animation, right? So this is what I'm basically saying. Start this animation when the user navigates to this state. Now, a couple of other cool things about this little states editor. Every one of our visual states can be given a transition value. So I said here, I want to take approximately 2 seconds, right, for the entire transition to occur. Other great things too. I can incorporate right here my easing functions. So I could give it a bounce effect, right? I could change the way it kind of moves on an arc. I can make it elastic. I could also incorporate some effects, blur, ripple, slide in, okay? So as I'm working with this editor, remember what the tool is doing, right? It's capturing all this markup. And now I have even more markup than I did previously because I also put in that rotation. So let's go ahead. See that little exclamation point, by the way? If you ever see that in Blend, it just means you got to rebuild because that was the out-of-date image. So if I do a Control F5 here, hey, look at that. Now we get a much more interesting visual effect. Isn't that nice? So once I define these states, how then can I actually transition? Well, that's also pretty simple. Let's go look at the code behind the star button. All right, there it is. Visual State Manager dot go to state. So this is where I'm just going to basically say, okay, go to this state, use the transition times if they were specified, and who has the state? Well, it's me, right? So we have these 3 parameters, basically the control that has the state defined, the name of the state, and if you want to use transitions. So again, here notice mouse down star, mouse enter star, mouse exit star. Those are the exact same names that we saw back over here. So pretty nice, right? So this little states editor, you know, it looks a little weird right now because you have to do things like define, you know, the direction of the transition. Just think of your basic state machine, right? You're over here and you're going to go over here now, right? Just connecting the bubbles with a little arrow. So we have to kind of set up which transition we're trying to go to. But beyond that, working with the actual transition is just a matter of working with your basic storyboards. And this editor, I think, is much easier than the old trigger editor, which I thought was a bit a bit clunky, especially when you start to work with things like property triggers and whatnot. So WPF programmers now basically have two different approaches on how they want to play around with visual states. You can fall back to the original trigger framework, or you can use this nice new Visual State Manager, which again is the preferred way to do things in Silverlight. So if you were to build up the same jackpot game in Silverlight, you wouldn't even have the option to use triggers. You would be using visual states all along. So that was one of my favorite changes for WPF4, the ability to work with visual states. So that's really all I wanted to say for these video treatments here. It was just kind of a way for us to take a little look at some of the nice changes that took place in 4.0. And like I said at the beginning of video 1, this is a re-recording of a talk that I gave a while back. So hopefully you've already had a chance to play around with some 4.0 features at work or at home. Just to kind of wrap up these different videos here. Video 1, we were talking about the changes that took place in C#. So remember, we had the dynamic language runtime, and we had optional and named parameters. And then in talk number 2, video 2, talked about VB changes and the task parallel library. And then here we talked about Windows Presentation Foundation, and we took a little tour at the Visual State Manager. Now, remember what I said at the start of the first video, right? The topics that I've shown you here in no way, shape, or form talk about all the framework changes. For example, WCF and Workflow both got some good updates as well. When it comes to Workflow, it wasn't just a good update, it was a complete rewriting. Some of you might know that Workflow under 3.5, it was a pretty interesting technology, but it definitely had a couple of blemishes, and 4.0 really went a long way to clean up some problems. Now, we didn't talk about those topics in this talk. That might be the topic for another talk someday. But anyway, if you would like to get a hold of me, remember my name is Andrew, and there's my email address. It's just atrolson, so a very good Minnesota name there, atrolson@intertech.com. Go ahead and drop me a line, and I'll be happy to talk with you about some 4.0 things. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
For more free learning resources and to see the latest lineup of our instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.